Hello, and welcome to the Angus and Pete Show. Views and opinions are strictly those of the presenters and their guests and should not be taken as advice. Goodness knows, we're not qualified to advise you about anything. Side effects may include mild amusement and occasional enlightenment with feelings of embarrassment, apathy, disappointment, and pity.
Welcome to episode 25. I'm Angus Pacey.
And I'm Pete Brown, and we are the Angus and Pete Show.
The place where you can listen to two guys chatting about that riveting world of customer engagement.
That's customer engagement, otherwise known as call centre, contact centre, customer service, customer experience, CX, or whatever else you're calling it this week.
And if you want to find out more about us, then please check us out on LinkedIn.
Angus, have we got anything in the post bag?
Yeah, we do. First one comes from Oka from Amsterdam.
Okay.
So she sent us a message and said she does listen occasionally, not all the time, which is not good.
Shame on you, Oka. Shame on you.
She listened to one of our recent episodes and it was really good. She's going to try and listen more often now. Well, Oka, the one thing I would say, the best time to listen is when you are traveling on the metro, going to work, on the plane, on the train. When you're listening, please think about who you should be telling that this podcast is really good and they need to listen as well. So, you can help us share the message.
Yeah, come on, Oka. We need all the help we can get. What else? Anything else?
Yeah, there was another one. Luke from Buckinghamshire. He's one of the regular commenters, actually. Yeah. He commented on our last episode, number 24. Remember the Outbound Odyssey one?
Yes.
And he picked up that you were talking really about proactive outbound comms, and that they were not typically a function that was focused on by many of the contact center vendors, which is an interesting observation.
And I think a lot of the innovation around outbound has been lost in some cases. But anyway, we did that to death. But thanks for listening, Luke, and thanks for your comments. Guess what, Angus? We've got a CX Insider. This episode features the fourth of our CX Insiders.
And remember, we handpick our guests because they're experts in the field and have knowledge and experience that now all our CX and contact center industry listeners will absolutely want to hear.
Yeah, they join us on the show in their own right. Their views are their own. They don't represent any organisation or third party, and no payments or inducements are made in either direction.
And this week, our insiders, Phil, we caught up with him to find out more about the role of the sales engineer. And he's one of those people that's been around for quite some time. So I think he'll have some good stories to tell. And today he's in a very senior role in one of the vendors. So we thought he'd have some very interesting insights.
Yeah, so we sat down with Phil earlier today to hear about his experiences and views and really to get the inside track on the sales engineering game.
So let's go and have a listen to what he had to say for himself.
CX Insider, your inside track.
So, Phil, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Okay, thanks, Pete. I'm probably what I would classify now as an industry veteran. I didn't realise that until I looked back at when I joined the industry. So, been in this industry straight from school. Started off as an engineer, as lots of people do who work in sales engineering. So, started off installing, worked in some very big call centres, the retail industry, the mail order industry. Had some fun times working in there. And as technology has evolved, I've been there from that transition of on-prem to FeatureNet to big exchange rooms with great big call centres in them and a second room just to put the batteries in.
Give us a year. When did you start?
Started in 87.
That is a long time ago.
So we had this careers teacher who thought it was a great idea to get a number of us into the telecoms world. None of us knew what it was, but of the people that joined the industry, I think there's probably only one who's not in it anymore. So it's been a very good career. And I've gone from being an engineer, and then I got fed up with salespeople. I got fed up with salespeople who oversold things. I ended up fixing a lot of things for the salespeople, and I thought, you know what? I could actually move into sales engineering where you're doing a little bit of selling, but you're owning the technology and the strategy with the customer. Moved into pre-sales. I've been doing it now for the best part of 20 years.
But you weren't brave enough to be a salesperson yourself.
I've had a go at being a salesperson.
How did that work out for you?
It was fine. I actually hit my number. But when you're a salesperson and you carry an individual number, you're measured by that individual number. You're not measured by building a relationship with a customer, helping create a strategy for a customer, helping transform that customer. You are just purely measured around the number that you deliver. I prefer the consulting, the business consulting, the sales engineering. It's gone from you're a sales engineer, you're a technical consultant, you're a solution consultant, but at the end of the day, it is all around engineering solutions to address customers' needs. And I do think customer engineering is the right word.
What's really changed in the role over time? How has that role evolved?
The ingredients of the role haven't changed. For a vendor, the sales engineer is there to sell the value, is there to sell the capability of what that vendor solution is. In an integrated world or an agency world, you may have different vendors. A good sales engineer should then consider what the customer's requirements are and address them with the right technology to deliver the outcomes. Now, that's easier said than done. They all have their pros and cons. They all bring different challenges, but it's ultimately how each of those technologies can address the customer's needs, either in a commercial sense, an operational sense, a strategic sense. Really, really good sales engineer has to look at it holistically from end to end. I've not found one singular vendor that can scale from the SME world all the way up to the large enterprise that can do every single bit. Each vendor will have a place within that portfolio, within that solution for the customer.
What does a day in the life of a sales engineer look like? What is the role? If you were going to give me a job description,
Okay.
what is it?
The role of a sales engineer is to understand what the customer's challenges are, right? And it's working with sales and it's getting access to the right people. A salesperson may only get you in front of procurement. They won't give you access to all of the different stakeholders that you've got in a customer, from an agent to the operational teams, to the technical teams, support teams, the product management teams. The role of the sales engineer in front of the end customer is to understand what those requirements are, listen and ask questions. And then once you start to furnish that insight, furnish what those pain points are, the fundamental role of a sales engineer or pre-sales guy is to document them requirements, to come up with a solution design and an architecture and support commercial model and the operational model that addresses those needs. You have to know the technology for one, that's first and foremost. You have to be able to engage and have a conversation with a customer in a consultative manner. Then you've got to translate those business needs into a technical solution. You've got to create a proposal with recommendations. You'll have to look at integrations. You may have to consider different deployment models. You may have to consider migration strategies. And then you've got to present that capability.
It sounds like the salespeople have got nothing to do then. What do they actually do?
I tried to think about how many salespeople I've worked with. It's hundreds. And salespeople come with different roles. You may have a strategic account director who's there to own a relationship at a strategic level. You may have a sales specialist, and the sales specialist should work hand in hand with the sales engineer, because it's all right coming up with a solution. We've got to provide some form of business case. It's all a return on investment. And that return on investment process is the sales engineer collaborating and working hand in hand with the sales team and the business team. Some may sit back and let the sales engineer take control, which
Right.
I think is a risky process, because the sales engineer may miss things. The sales engineer may miss how to present that commercially back to a customer.
So if you were giving advice to a salesperson, what would you tell them they should be doing or could be doing to get the best out of their sales engineer?
Get them in front of the right people. Ask questions, listen to the responses. And what is it that the customer is trying to achieve? You need to understand how the customer works. I've been in situations where a sales buyer may come in and go, right, I need a price. What do you need a price for? Well, they've got 150 voice agents and a bit of reporting. Can you give me a price? That's not a qualified opportunity, is it?
No, not really, no.
If a sales guy wants to provide a quote, which is quick and dirty like that, then create a pricing sheet.
Yeah.
Then create a pricing sheet. Don't get the sales engineer involved in that scenario, because the sales engineer is an invaluable resource within an organization. use them wisely.
Normally, they're quite a scarce resource as well. They're not hundreds of them that are knocking around waiting for things to do. You talk about your sales specialists.
Yep.
So we're not talking about generalists that are account managers and doing the sort of relationship stuff, the guys that take everybody out to lunch and dinner all the time and play golf. Sales specialists that have got a tighter knowledge on the subject. What you're alluding to is that this role needs to speak to everybody in the business. They've got to really understand the business people in that. Everybody says they're going to do it, but do you really see that happen in reality, or does it happen somewhere else?
Let's go back to all of the different touch points, all of the different functions that sit within let's call it a mature, medium to large scale customer service environment. You could have 10 different teams, couldn't you? You could have the advisor, you could have the agent, you could have the planners, the contact center managers, the quality team, the compliance team, the business analyst, the strategy teams, the analyst teams, the sales teams, the marketing teams. If you wanted to support an engagement with a customer and make sure you tick all of them boxes, then the sales cycle is going to get extremely long. So I think it's about finding access to the right people quickly in order to give you that information. If you're going after a new business piece of work, and if it's an RFI or an RFP, and you've not been able to influence it to understand those challenges, then you're not going to get in front of those teams. You're not.
So you just said some magic letters, RFI and RFP. Now, you know, because you've listened to some episodes, or I hope you have, Phil, we've done a little bit of work on this. Tell us about your views of RFIs and RFPs and how they're managed and what good looks like. Maybe you could tell us what bad looks like as well, because there's been more than one shit show around an RFP, right? So
And
have you been involved in any of them?
Don't name the company name, don't name the poor individuals involved, but some really good examples. I mean, come on, you must have a couple of good car crash stories.
Yeah. What's your RFP experience, Phil?
I reckon I've done over 1,000 RFPs. More in my working career.
I really want to ask this question right up front then. So you've done 1,000. Yeah. How many have you won?
I reckon my win rate is 1 in 9, 1 in 8. Quite good in the grand scheme of things. The worst one, okay? The worst one. Let's just say a public sector organisation went out to tender and they wanted the response back between Christmas and New Year. Our sales team go on holiday. The bid manager goes on holiday. We tried to get an extension. The customer rejected it. And it's 300 technical questions and maybe 40 operational strategic questions. But then at the same time, they also want a solution overview. They also want a pricing description. 10 o'clock Christmas Eve, many, many years ago, I was still working on it. That was the time when I thought, if I ever get one of these RFIs in again, that needs to be completed between Christmas and New Year. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So that was a real poor experience. If you'd have sent it back in between Christmas and New Year, or even if you'd have sent it back the first or the second week in January, the consultants who's published the RFI, they're not going to do anything with it anyway. I find they often publish dates which are a tick box exercise within their process, and they don't often understand what the implications are to the likes of me or my team or you and the sales team in order to complete that. Now, as I'm getting older and getting wiser, we've now been pushing back and we've been challenging.
What are the red flags? You're obviously involved in the qualification process of these things. It's not just RFPs and RFIs, but when you're looking at an opportunity, when you're sitting there with your sales team and they're telling you how absolutely nailed on this thing is, so what are the red flags we should look out for when it comes to, do you know what, that might not be what you think it is, or that might not be a good spend of our time?
Have we got any relationship with that organisation, whether it's at an executive level, whether it's at strategic level, whether it's at an operational level, first and foremost. Now, if you've got no relationship, none whatsoever, then your chances of winning are extremely low, unless you lowball the bid. You go in and you want to win it because you may want to get into a strategic sector, or you may want to get into a different market segment. Therefore, you're going to lowball, you're going to go in with the lowest price in order to get to the next phase.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations like that where we have got to the next phase. The good ones are where you've influenced it. The good ones is where you've influenced the RFI or the RFP. And when I say influence, you understand what the processes, you understand what the buying criteria is, you understand what the business challenges that they've got. You've already got that in your mind and as an organization of how you're going to address it. And more importantly, you understand what the commercial requirements are as well.
How do you go about influencing? This is a bit of a recurring theme. There was an episode that we did a little while ago with a guy called Terry, and he was talking about RFPs and stuff. And one of the conclusions he came to was that he would much prefer salespeople spend their time evangelizing and engaging with customers before there is even an opportunity, which is a nice thing to say, but going to your point about salespeople are actually paid on the number. So how does an organization actually influence? Is it marketing? Is it trade shows? Is it, knowledge leadership? How does that actually work when you're influencing a specific opportunity?
It's a great question. And I suppose the answer could be in all of the above. A trade show, it could be public sector framework. It could be, regional events, specific product marketing sessions are against vertical use cases. Proving referenceability is key there, because if you've done it before, then you give that organization the assurance that you could be a trusted partner. But to go back to the point, how do you influence? If they're already an existing customer, then your sales teams should understand how that business operates. That's revenue on your bottom line year after year. Organizations should be focused on retaining customers just as much as winning new ones.
Yeah.
Going back to Terry's point, it's great to go and evangelize, but a new business sales guy whose role it is to win net new business won't have that luxury unless he's given time.
You made an interesting point. You said organizations, resellers, should be focusing equally on new business and maintaining the customer. You've won a deal, you've deployed it, the customers tick the box, salesperson's very happy, they've made their quarterly number, 24-month contract. Who should be working with that customer to make sure that they stay a happy customer and they renew? Sales engineers or somebody else?
What my experience tells me is that the person who originally sells the deal, once it's sold, once it's gone into delivery, there's a likelihood that individual's role then is to go and work with another organization to acquire. At that point, it'll get delivered into account management teams. And with an account management team, you still need the role of the sales engineer, because owning a relationship in life is just as much as important of winning new business. Contact center as a service, it's not the days where you're buying into a 5-year contract with an on-prem platform and you've got a 5-year guaranteed revenue stream. These days, some customers, they may swap and change every 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that every customer does that, because the cost of change from one vendor to another is high. What I see is that different salespeople manage the initial sales engagement versus managing customers in life. And you've also got customer success teams. You've got service teams. It's providing them updates in terms of what's going on with their solution that they've acquired. How does that work? How do you have to educate the customer? And how do you have to educate the support teams on what this new capability looks like? It's a cyclic process. There's a company I used to work for. We had a life cycle model where you consult at the front end, you design something, you implement, you manage, and then it's iterative. In my view, you should go back quarter on quarter, make sure the customer is happy, look at any challenges that they may have, address those challenges. It's keeping abreast of that customer in terms of what they want.
Phil, I want to take a slightly different direction now, because I know this is dear to your heart. Did you listen to episode 18, On Your Marks, Get Set, Demo?
I did.
Yeah, I know you did. So where do demos figure in your world?
If you're at a trade show, or if you're doing an event, you'll do a showcase, right?
Yeah.
Inbound, outbound, digital, AI, reporting, analytics, payment services, voice of the customer, whatever it may be, because there's lots of different technology in there. You may do a generic one.
Mm.
The bee in my bonnet I have is, if we're going to do a demonstration for a customer, which is tailored to the customer's business challenges, then we shouldn't be doing a demonstration without doing any discovery. No discovery, no demo. when it comes to doing a demonstration, a proper demonstration, that should be all around understanding what you need to position and where and why and how.
Do you think salespeople get that? Because there is this myth, isn't there, that salespeople come along to sales engineers and say, "Can you do a demo?" Yes. What do you want to see? Not really sure. When do you want it? Well, this afternoon will be good. What are you trying to achieve? I'm just trying to get an order. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, happens every day. Every day. Happens every day. And I've got lots of friends in this industry, and it happens to them every day as well. The good salespeople get it. It also depends where they're up to in that sales cycle. If we say, we've got a hot lead, we've qualified it, right, Phil, I need your team to go and do a demo. Okay, what do they want? Well, they're interested in reporting. They're interested in AI. Okay, right. What they're really looking for? Well, I don't know, because we only just got the lead from a marketing campaign. But that happens. Discovery is key, because, you know, as I tried to say, the role of the sales engineer is very important. And a sales engineer has got a lot of specialism. I wouldn't want to send a speech specialist who knows all around grammatical use cases and how to use AI and things like that to go and do a generic demo for a customer, because they're an expensive resource.
Right. Do you think customers help as well? Because I've been in situations where the customer said, "We want a demo," and they can't articulate what they want to see because actually they don't know what they want. So they say, "Give us a demo," and "Can you do this? Can you do that?" comes out. That's really not the salesperson's fault at that point. The customer needs some managing, right? How do you work that one through?
If you don't have a relationship with the customer, then you can do quite a generic demo, but you're still not getting to the challenges of what you're trying to do and trying to achieve. So if a customer says, "Right, I just want a demo," then I would mandate that both the sales engineer and the salespeople understand where they're up to in the sales process. What's the demo going to do? What's the demo going to achieve? And what is the outcome that the customer's looking for? That is part of qualification.
We've spoken a lot about the forward-facing stuff, the sales engineer working with the sales organization and the front-end customer. But there's a back end to this, rather an attractive back end, but nevertheless a back end, which all comes around the product, the people that are building it, you know, the go-to-market. And I guess you'd call that, what would you call that, Angus? You'd call that product management, wouldn't you? I know that's your bag. What are the expectations of product managers and the people that are actually building the stuff that you're ultimately going to be charged with delivering?
Be brutal. Be brutal.
Yeah,
come on, stop. I can see you trying to figure out how to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
Don't.
I can be diplomatic.
Yeah, we don't want any of that, though. This is the Angus and Pete show.
Also be very direct, because I do remember an occasion where Angus and I worked in the same organisation and we had a massive dispute to the point of 40 salespeople disagreeing with the strategy of where that organisation was going at that point with the technology. However, if you work for a vendor, you work very, very closely with your product team, because the product team should be considering the short, medium, and long terms of where the market's heading. I do have experience of this, of taking requirements in from a certain market. Are there regulatory challenges? Are there contractual challenges? Are there instances within a certain market segment where the product, the service may need enhancing? And having that direct feedback loop into the product team to influence the product vision and strategy is absolutely imperative, especially in a vendor. And if you work for a reseller or a systems integrator where you're reselling a vendor's technology, they will have a product manager within their community. The relationship between a sales engineer and a product manager should be extremely close, because in my view, a product manager, when they launch a product, the success of that product is dependent upon the sales engineers, it's dependent upon the salespeople, and it's dependent upon the delivery and the operational teams making that product a success. Their goals and objectives should be around growing market share. It should be around revenue generation and life cycle management of that portfolio as well. You know, the product manager should have a good understanding of the technology, the market, the strategy, the commercial model, the operational model. Just like Angus.
I remember that bust up. I don't think I'll ever forget it. Different viewpoints really came to a head when there were big inflection points. It wasn't about this or that small feature. It was, we are going to strategically change our product offering from focusing on on-premise to going to the cloud. In all my experience, in all the organizations I've worked for, that is a big issue because it affects people's jobs where they perceive their skills to be. It affects their comfort zones. So where you see sales engineers working with product managers, at what point do product managers have to really start talking to the SEs to start taking them on the journey? Because they're not necessarily going to agree.
Upon reflection of what happened, there are some interesting lessons learned. And one thing I pick up on that is there are sales engineers who are very confident, all right? You know, being a really, really good sales engineer who knows the technology inside out, and they like to be at the top of their game, the top of their industry. Now, if you're moving from an on-prem to a public cloud service, and that public cloud service doesn't have 300 features that the sales engineer's been comfortable positioning, presenting, telling, demonstrating, documenting, if you don't include them within the phase of building the business case in order to take that product to market, I think that's where that gap fell down, in my view. I think the business was going to market with a new service. We all knew why we're going to a new service, but because so many people had worked with these customers for so long, they were wedded to the features and functionality. Now, can you deliver those same outcomes in a different way? Yes, you can. And I think some sales engineers, they don't necessarily look at the bigger picture and doing it in a different way, as opposed to the way that they've been comfortable with doing it for the last 20 years.
The lesson I took out of that, and I will be honest, it took about 3 years to kind of penetrate.
He's a slow learner. He's a slow learner.
Yeah,
Phil,
it wasn't quick. It takes a while to kind of get processed in my head. The learning that I took out of that is that product managers that are thinking about taking a new product to market should have a group of trusted advisors in the sales engineer community that are open-minded enough to be able to have that early discussion around, this is what we're going to do, this is why we're going to do it, this is how we're going to do it. And then own the problem together, because I think product managers these days in a lot of the vendors and a lot of the resellers are still feature focused. They're not why that feature's needed. They're not how that feature's going to be deployed. It's not about how's that go-to-market model going to be. Because sales engineers in my book are the ones that are at the coalface, and they've got to be able to answer a load of questions. They're a huge source of information. They need to know ahead of time what the thinking is, so they can start shaping those conversations.
Very much so. I think if we were to take a brand new proposition to market now, you're absolutely right. You need a set of stakeholders with you that know the technology, know the market, know how to deliver it, know how to compare it, know how to influence a customer and take them on that journey.
Yeah.
Full stop. Don't forget, if you work for a vendor, the reseller is also a customer. The system integrator is also a customer of yours. You've got the end customer, you may be reselling through a distribution. They will ask you all sorts of questions. They will ask you, compare it to how VIA used to work. Please compare it to how Twilio do their network-based services. How does Amazon Connect work? How does that compare with what Salesforce are doing or what ServiceNow are doing and what other vendors are doing? So you have to know the market, but the sales engineers have to be part of your process. They're part of your stakeholder community in building your proposition to go to market, and they are fundamental to that success.
So let me take this one step further.
Yep.
You get a rookie sales engineer onto your team. What are the things that you would focus on to get them effective as quickly as possible?
Well, the first thing is to protect them. So you don't put them in front of a sales guy, and you don't put them in front of a customer straight away. So it's building their knowledge at a technical level. If it's one vendor, two vendor, three vendors, let them ask lots of questions. Let them get the questions wrong. Let them get the questions right, and build their education and let them become comfortable in terms of what their role is expected to be, and let them carry out the role, the rookie role, in front of the team. And we ask them to do, what we call a show and tell. You tell me how you approach it and how you're going to deliver it. You give them real life examples, but you give them the environment where they can work, they can learn, they can educate, and they can break things as they go. Once they get to that point, I would recommend the junior sales engineer to go shadowing with a more experienced sales engineer. As a manager, the most important thing you've got to do with a rookie sales engineer is to give them the confidence to go and have the conversation internally before you put them out externally. Give them all the coaching. Give them the ability to go and ask the discovery questions. Give them the confidence that they can go and do a good customer demonstration. But I would make sure the rookie doesn't go out, isn't exposed. He would have the training, he would have the education, he would have the guidance, and he would have the comfort. And if it doesn't go right, so what?
Yeah.
So what? I don't
Yeah.
care. No, you come back into me, and then we'll educate you. Then you go again.
So if you were thinking about the personal characteristics of an individual, what are the things that make a good sales engineer?
The best sales engineers I work with, yes, they need to know the technology. They need to be able to have a style, a comfortable style, which allows them to traverse and have different conversations with different people in an organization. Build trust. Someone who can build trust and empathy, both internal within the sales team, in your sales community, but most importantly with the customer as well. Because if you build and become that trusted advisor, then you can influence a lot more.
Right.
And there are some really, really, really good sales engineers who can then do that. Not all of them do that though. I'll be honest. Some sales engineers, I'll do the demo, I'll do the RFI. That's me done.
Phil, we've reached that point in the show now where we give you the opportunity to drop 3 pearls of wisdom for our listeners. Wishes, advice, requests, insights, but they need to be wise. The clue is in the name, really. So what would be your first pearl of wisdom?
In the role of the sales engineer, pre-sales, whatever title you want to give it, ask questions. Ask questions and challenge. Nothing worse than being a sales engineer who gets overruled by a salesperson. If you don't get the information that you need, then challenge back.
Right, that's clear. That's good. What's the second one?
You were given a pair of eyes and a pair of ears and a mouth for a reason. Use them in the right order.
Can you be more specific? Because that could be a bit abstract for some of our listeners. Can you be absolutely clear what you're talking about there?
I'm talking about if there is a silence with the customer, don't necessarily open your mouth. A good sales engineer can also read a room. Buying decisions and decision makers come in different guises. You don't have to continually talk. You don't. Silence is often a good thing because you get the customer to respond back. So what I'm saying is read the room, read the people, listen, and respond when needed, and ask questions when you don't have the answers.
Right.
Use it in the right order.
Yeah.
And more importantly, get your sales guy to use that in the right order.
And number 3, the third one.
Our industry's changing. It's changing. The amount of AI vendors that are out there that are professing with the use of agentic AI to take all human intervention out of every process. It's creating complexity. I think it's creating confusion. It's going to be an interesting time for the sales engineer because it's a new era we're going in and we need to educate them with discovery questions, with processes, because at the moment, a lot of it's buzzwords. Some of these buzzwords don't address business problems, but some salespeople and the industry that we're in are running away with some of these buzzwords. And we just, as a community, as a sales engineering community, we need to focus on the here and now as well as the future. But I think the industry is going to change.
That's an interesting way to wrap this up. So, Phil, we've come to the end of this CX Insider session, and I just want to say I've enjoyed it unexpectedly, but I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really good catching up. I don't think you and I have had a discussion like this for a long time, and we used to have them.
We do.
Many moons ago.
On that note, it's a big thanks from me, Phil.
Yeah, and definitely thanks from me.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
CX Insider, your inside track.
Well, that was an interesting one, wasn't it? Do you know what, Angus?
Yeah.
Do you remember episode 1 where we had Mr. Cynical from Manchester? Wasn't that him?
Yeah, it wasn't cynical at all.
No.
He had some really good insights.
What do you think the key takeaways were?
I think there were a couple. One, for me, was the sales engineer role is there to sell the value, the capability of the product or the platform that addresses the business problem. And it's not just the technical features, it's commercial, technical, and the business value.
He also articulated well, I thought, the importance of getting in front of the right people and understand the problem in their terms. You know, you might be talking about the same requirement, but people have very different views of it. And I think you've said before, if you're going to capture information, you should get it from multiple sources. And, you know, very clearly, they talk to the right people, and their job is to come up with a solution design and then a proposal that stacks up.
He kind of highlighted two things about sellers. One, that they've got to make sure that the DCs get access to the right people. And then the other one is that this is not a throw it over the fence issue. A sales engineer has got to work with the salesperson to build that business case so that you frame it correctly is absolutely critical.
They're also an expensive resource, right? And they're quite scarce. So sellers should be very careful about where they use sales engineers and make sure that it's done in a considered manner.
I've never worked in a business where you had too many sales engineers and they were underutilized. Never. He came up with a really interesting view about what happens after the sale as it goes into delivery. And his point was, SEs should still be involved with that customer so that you can deliver on promises made, but also drive the adoption of the solution. And then also go and revisit that customer on a regular basis. They should be going to visit that customer, working with the different people that have got that solution on a quarterly basis. I thought that was really, really good.
So they're involved at the front end in new business and acquisition, but they're also involved in that whole account management, sustaining BAU thing as well, which I think is BAU, that's business as usual, 3-letter acronym, apologies. Phil had some quite strong views around demos as well, which I like, and I don't think you need to embellish this much. Demos, no discovery, no demo, like that.
And then at the end, his 3 pearls of wisdom were really good as well. I thought they were succinct and very real. Go and ask the questions. Don't wait for people just to tell you stuff.
That whole thing around, what did he say? You were given eyes, ears, and a mouth for a reason. Use them in the right order. Read the room. You don't have to talk all the time. Resist the temptation to fill the silence. That is a really good point that not just sales engineers, but anyone can learn from. And Phil sounds like he's very good at it. I
thought when he said, and teach the salespeople to do the same thing, I thought that was probably the valuable part out of the whole thing.
Anyway, we're done for this episode. So we'll be back next time with episode 26.
In the meantime, follow the Angus and Pete Show on LinkedIn for news and notifications. And please message us directly to tell us what you want us to talk about, how we're doing, and keep that post bag bulging.
The show is available on all your favourite podcast platforms. Please like, subscribe, share, and help us to spread the word.
Pete, even though we had an insider on the show, we still cannot wrap up before we've done Joke of the Week.
Well, I've gone for short and punchy this week. Short and punchy. Why did the sales engineer get kicked out of the comedy club?
No idea.
Because every time he told a joke, he followed it up with a 30-slide PowerPoint explaining why it was funny.
I've seen that very recently, but we'll keep quiet on that one.
Anyway, cheers, Angus.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks for tuning in to the Angus and Pete Show. Remember, it's based on the personal views and opinions of the hosts and their guests. If you're feeling aggrieved or litigious, take a chill pill. There's already enough stress in the world. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform for more episodes. We'll see you next time. Oh, and tell your friends.